So, for the past several days, we've been considering the question, is it rational to believe in God's existence? I hope you have had an opportunity to consider your personal answer to this question. I hope you've been troubled by it. I hope you've actually wondered what the right answer to this question is. Let me tell you why I believe it is rational to believe in God's existence. Before I do, let me welcome you to this video section for clause 1. You'll be taking notes over this information, but first I want to set up the discussion as we'll present it, and I'll tell you when you need to grab the handout and begin taking notes. Before I make my case, let me ask you a question. Would you sit on a stool that looked like this? Why or why not? Assuming that most people would be glad to sit on that kind of a stool, would that change if one of the legs were missing? You may still try it if you were adventurous and had a good sense of balance, but it certainly wouldn't be comfortable. And what if the cross supports were broken? Could you still sit on a stool with only 3 legs? I mean, a stool made for 4 legs with one missing? Would you sit on it if it only had 3? What about a stool with only 2 legs? What about a stool with 1 leg? Now, that piece of furniture that was designed for rest isn't so restful if it isn't going to support you, right? I think most of us would rather just stand. That stool just doesn't work right. Now, that may seem a little odd, but we'll come back to that idea a little later. Let me tell you why I believe it is rational to believe in God's existence. This is, first of all, intended to be an outline, an overview of the rationality of belief in God. I do not plan on giving you a full book version here. It's not intended to be an in-depth study. This is a very big topic that we will not be able to answer in just one sitting. We are only beginning that conversation with this information, and I hope it continues for you throughout the rest of your life. So play the skeptic and write your questions on a separate sheet of paper. It's important to keep your mind engaged. So think critically and record questions that you think are important to answer. I want to tell you that we will not be taking time to answer all of your questions even after this movie in class. I will not be taking time to present all of the evidence for why I believe what I believe and why you can too. We're not going to be digging deeply into all of these facts or even in the course this year. But let me offer you this invitation. If you want to discuss any of this information further, I will make myself available to you after school anytime to discuss this information. Okay, so the background information is all out of the way. Grab that worksheet, the one that I gave you in class, and get ready to take notes. You'll be filling in the blanks with the underlined words. Why do I believe that it is rational to believe in God's existence? First, because there's a large amount of historical evidence. You should write that historical evidence in the blank number 1 on your handout. Let's talk about this a little bit more. It is rational to believe in the existence of God because of the historical evidence of Jesus Christ. There is just as much evidence that Jesus existed and was who he claimed as there is evidence that John Wilkes Booth was the murderer of Abraham Lincoln. Of course, denying that John Wilkes Booth murdered Abraham Lincoln will cause you to be labeled as a conspiracy nut. Those kind of people do exist, but they're not considered rational. Talking about historical evidence, there's as much evidence that the Bible contains the actual words of the authors credited with writing the Bible as to any other ancient text. In the case of Homer's Iliad, for example, there is more evidence for the accuracy of the Bible than the Iliad. It is rational to believe in the existence of God because when we apply the same rules that we apply to historical fact, Jesus, the Bible, and God all stand up to that test. But that is only one reason. Another reason is that I believe it is rational to believe in the existence of God is because there's a large amount of scientific evidence. This is blank number 2 on your handout. If I deny the Bible's explanation of the origin of the earth, I would have to accept such unobserved theories as spontaneous generation, macroevolution, an ancient earth, and others. Basically, I would have to break the rules of science to believe these things that are considered by some to be science. Things that seem to conform to reality, like design, order, life from life, cause and effect, fit better in the biblical record rather than some of the teachings of modern science? Let's get something straight. Scientific theory does not adequately describe the natural world. Science has a long history of getting it wrong, and it simply cannot exclude the supernatural world. Just because something cannot be explained or proven to exist scientifically does not mean we deny its existence. Think about those you love, or those who love you. Love cannot be proven scientifically. And yet, not only love, but also joy and peace and others are accepted as fact. The scientific odds of a person fulfilling the prophecies of Jesus' birth are astronomical, basically a mathematical improbability. Still, we have record that it happened. And finally, probably not the strongest argument here, but science has tried to discredit the Bible for centuries, but it has done nothing but confirm major portions to be correct. Doesn't it seem inconsistent or even irrational to write off Jesus, the Bible, and God? So I believe it is rational to believe in the existence of God because science cannot rule him out. But the biblical explanation of the world seems to better fit scientific observations. Another reason I believe it is rational to believe in the existence of God is the large amount of philosophical reasoning to support God's existence. Now this gets a little bit heavy, but think about this. When it comes right down to it, there's really no proof that anything exists, and yet we don't often question it. By the way, this branch of philosophy is called metaphysics. The question of, do I really exist, or is this all a dream? That's metaphysics. But even if you could argue whether I even exist, I do, and I have the ability to think and reason, gather facts, and arrive at my own conclusions independent of someone else. That is called logic. Even those who deny the existence of absolutes accept that absolutes exist. And in our honest moments, we're all faced with the reality that there must be something more than me, something greater than the globe I dwell on, and something larger than even the universe I reside in. For me, that something else has to be my God. I use that with a little g because at this point we're leaving this being nameless. If I accept the fact that this greater something does exist, then why couldn't it be the God of the Bible? The historical and the scientific evidence would suggest that the God of the Bible is a logical choice. I accept that the existence of God of the Bible is a rational belief because it is truly logical when considered along with other data. And number 4 on your sheet is personal experience. This should not be ruled out as a significant source. Personal experience may seem weak compared with other factors, but we all accept many things without scientific, philosophical, historical proof. Think about the things you're accepting right now. Others love me. This chair I'm sitting in will hold me up. That food that I just ate is good for me. And the list goes on and on. I may think I know these things based on past experience, but that's not proof. Just because something happened before does not prove that it will happen again. Now, I may be able to know some basic things based on past experiences, but that is a lot different than proof. And so what I'm saying here is that personal experience is accepted every day, and so it's valid to consider it. Even with all of its shortcomings, personal experience is still considered a source for historical, scientific, and philosophical fact. Think about this. Eyewitness testimony, based solely on personal experience, is commonly accepted as a form of proof in a court of law. So why shouldn't I believe in God based on my own experiences or the experience of others, as long as it continues to conform with historical, scientific, and logical proof? Now, in all of these 4 things, there's a common denominator. Something that should be true for all. Let me ask you this. What causes someone to be irrational? Isn't it irrational to apply a different standard to similar circumstances? Doesn't rejecting a similar conclusion to similar circumstances seem irrational? Wouldn't overlooking evidence in one situation that would make the case in another situation an irrational act? What about allowing an irrational source to be used for a rational decision? Isn't that basically irrational? Here's the bottom line. You must be consistent to be rational. So we've discussed the four reasons to believe in God's existence. They are historical evidence, when applied consistently, philosophical reasoning, when used consistently, scientific data, interpreted consistently, and personal experience relied on as it is consistent with other sources. What we've just described is biblical faith. That is precisely what the Bible teaches we should do. Believe things that are consistent with reality, historical, philosophical, and scientific reality. When you put all of these things together, you have a strong, sturdy, four-legged stool upon which your faith can rest, and as well as the belief in the existence of God. Now, I'm sure that you have many questions that you'd like to ask about this, so be sure to record them. As I stated, we'll probably not ask them all as a class, but we will discuss some of them. We'll also take this information and talk through one application of consistency and complete the rest of your notes. I look forward to discussing this with you then. Thank you.